Another round? That's a great idea, friend. Now, you say you just came back from Corona? Tell me all about your adventures in Faelon. I'm Lore Master Matt.
And I'm Faelon Jon.
Welcome back to the Sleeping Grush podcast, your source for information from every corner of the world of Faelon. Today we are sitting in a beautiful room with great ambiance.
Do we want to say we're sitting in a private room? We're going to give the wrong
We
impression.
are sitting in a private room reserved specially for us.
Yeah. Typically there's two rooms back here that are rented out to role-playing groups.
Yes.
One fantasy theme, the one we're in,
Yep.
and one science fiction theme with all the fixings, the big screen TV, the murals on the walls, and a big table, and you can have your nice private role-playing session down here at the cardboard, and it's nice.
You absolutely can.
This is a nice facility.
I got in here a little early today, and they told me the room wasn't ready yet. And what they meant was they had not filled this giant pitcher of water and put clean, fresh cups in here.
Well, allow me while you're regaling us with whatever you're going to regale us. I'm going to go get a glass of water. So clearly, you need to come to Cardboard Corner.
Absolutely. Cardboard Corner Cafe is the best game cafe in Kansas City. 2 locations, one in Overland Park, one in Lenexa. Amazing food, great beverages, right next door to Tabletop Game and Hobby here in Overland Park. So you can have your waffles, and then you can go over and buy your fitness.
And free water. Would you like one?
And free waffles. I would love one, actually. I kind of just wasted my voice doing the lore videos.
Right.
A moment ago. Just going to tease those a little bit.
This is awesome.
Yeah. So if you're in Kansas City, folks, stop by Cardboard Corner Cafe. They are our very generous hosts. We love them very much, and they are also our flagship here for Free Blades. All right. So let's get into it.
Your paint table.
My paint table is very interesting today. So as you know, I've been talking about my Varthrallans for a while. They are still in process. Not going as fast as I would love, but that's anybody that's seen me paint knows that that's going to be the case. But I do have an interesting little side quest that I've gotten myself into. If you all have been following along, we've been dropping studio paint guides onto the website for each of the models there. So you can go onto the website. We're almost finished. I think I have 4 or 5 factions left. You can go onto the website.
Think about that, though.
I know.
Oh, you're almost finished, and you have 5 factions left.
No,
Some games have only like 6 factions.
It's true.
Stupid number, like 18 or whatever it is.
It has been a long couple of months getting these pumped out, and but I'm enjoying that very much. So what we're doing is we're taking each model and we're showing 6 paints, pro acryl paints, as a matter of fact, 6 pro acryl paints that were either actually used on the model, in the case of Aaron Newell painting them as our studio.
Like display model that shows up in the store.
Right.
Yeah.
Or taking the models that came before Aaron and converting those colors into a pro acryl.
What's the equivalent?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've been working on that, and we also are about to start something I'm calling Lore Tones, which is a special kind of studio paint guide that takes a figure and we paint it in the colors of something specific in Faelon. So for instance, a Haradellin from Tanar will have a specific red and white paint scheme, and we're going to showcase those on Lore Tones. One that I'm working on right now is the armor for the Marshall. That's a very specific armor in lore.
Yep.
And Aaron painted them a very specific way, but a couple of the paints are no longer available. So he worked very hard.
I will personally send the person who provides me their mailing address a standard model, a 25 mil base model, their choice, who is the first person in the Sleeping Grush podcast text channel to, after you hear this podcast, to post the name of the armor worn by, or the material it's made out of, which is the same thing, worn by the machine.
Awesome. So he came up with a new paint scheme for me, using paints from Pro Acryl that are available now. And so I'm going to do up one of these lore tomes with that on there before I do the Rochelle cards.
Right.
So that's what's going on. But I have a special task on my desk right now involving the Raven Blade. As many of you know, Matt Budney is the world builder that adopted the Raven Blade. He had a lot of ideas early on for how those were developed, and he has a specific color scheme, a specific palette that he envisions them using at this place in the lore. And of course, none of our models are painted that way. So
Right. Oh yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so
I get it.
I have started painting Ravenblade models in that specific color palette. And we'll be able to show those off when I get done with those. They're going to take a little precedence over the Varcrawling because I really want to get those out. So that's what's going on my paint desk, John.
Right. Nice. That's awesome.
Now, normally one of us talks about a game. There's nothing normal about
Something normal here.
um, and today we have a special spike in win because our last game was against each other. We played a Varcrawling versus Kandorian game.
275.
275.
775 gold. I was Candor, and Matt was Barcrown.
Yes.
Did you have any allies?
I did not take any allies.
I did. I think I had a Takar Hunter ally.
You did have a spell.
Yeah.
That was what was going on that left flank, as a matter of fact.
Oh, right. He was locking that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, John, what were your impressions of that game?
Well, first of all, playing Matt Gooch is a privilege. It's just, we're extremely lucky here. It's been playing for a very long, playing miniatures games for a very long time. Your opponent makes the game.
It's absolutely.
If you're just congenial, you enjoy the enjoyable moments. You don't get too down about the down moments. And of course Matt's got some specific things he wants to accomplish with the Varcrawlins, which is why he and I are playing to kind of talk through those and work those tactics out.
Yeah.
I'm throwing different factions at him. He doesn't even know what I've got in my case each week. So this time it was Candor because it's I don't I'm gonna have to figure out what we're gonna say here. When we're standing at the booth at Gen Con, somebody comes up and says, "Give me the elevator pitch of our crown." Like if I was gonna talk about bands, let's say finesse. They might say a similar thing about Eclipse, for example.
Yeah.
Is that really?
It's an interesting hybrid.
Yeah, hybrid's the right way to say it.
They're definitely not Harridan.
No, sorry.
Kazaric.
Yeah,
Where
they're not heavily armored,
tankety tank.
die hard, and whatever else.
Right. But they have some real beefy fighters that can stand in a gap and take punishment.
As we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. But then they also use the monks, which are definitely more finesse.
Right.
To get in there, they've got to get their focus off at the right time.
Yeah, so it's not maneuver finesse, it's buff finesse.
It's buff finesse.
Yeah, that's what we need to say. If that's a thing, we just create a term. Buff finesse. You're welcome.
We get to do that.
We do.
Right.
That's our problem. Always good. So domination was a scenario. 5 objectives on the table, 2 that are, in your zone, basically, 2 in your opponent's zone, 1 in the center. And you get points for controlling these different objectives, and they're worth more depending on whether they're on the other side of the table or your side of the table.
Yeah.
In my standard play, if I have a caster, my caster is because I'm trying to, keep control of mine and not let the other player have them. It's more important to at least contest it because they're worth a lot.
Right.
They're worth more to the other player, the ones on my side, than they are to him. And so there's like little fights around the 4 corners and a big fight in the middle, typically.
Yeah.
Not every time. That kind of was true for us, though. We had kind of a scrum in the center.
We did, and it seemed to me like pretty early on, we met in the center at all points of the field.
Right.
And left, somebody on our back objectives, but that the center fight was the one that drug on the longest for sure, and wasn't going anywhere. I think at that last turn, you managed to knock out the one ping monk.
Right.
And that was if it was going to go any further, that was going to be a problem.
Finally got to it.
Yeah. But then, like on your left flank, my right flank, um, we both kind of broke through and had troops around on the opposite objectives. The one on the left was kind of a stalemate.
Yeah, it never went anywhere.
And there's a very specific reason why that I'm sure John will elaborate on here in a minute.
Well, I had so my design, if I remember correctly, Eviscerator Leader, um, 2 Reapers, 2 Awakened,
Yeah,
the Jackal Priest, and a Jakar Hunter ally, and then the rest were Levy Spearmen.
right.
I love for 2 reasons. One, I love them
Yeah.
because of the things that you can do with them. And the other reason I love them is because Aaron Newell does it. So this is an old running gag inside the company where a couple of our volunteers were talking at Gen Con, and one was mentoring the other never to take a Levy Spearman because they were the worst model ever and completely useless. And as our good friend Roger knows, as soon as I hear that, I play nothing but that model
Right.
until everybody cries. So, but I like the Levy Spearman. It's my style anyway. He's terrible morale. He's D4 this point, pretty sure. Um, but a spear, a pavis, and a bow.
Right.
But to me, it's you got to do it. It's do it or not do it. You take 5,
Yep.
or you take none,
Right.
basically.
Right.
But a wall of them has a really interesting effect on the game. You can't just walk up and pick off this follower because they'll all shoot you, and even though they don't have terribly good RAR, they can, somebody's gonna roll a assist,
Sooner or later,
right?
something's coming through.
And you can't just shoot them down because there's defense 7 for
That's right.
range attacks.
Which is what I found to be
Point. State
really
archery
frustrating me. Yeah.
like, what are you doing?
There's just this plackable wall,
Right.
moving forward, and I'm trying to knock
Then
off other.
But if I need it, one can slip away and get in behind another model to provide spear support, another die to throw.
Absolutely, and they did.
And those dice, they get thrown typically at the end of the combat after the heroes have already fought and the resources are used up. The parries are gone and the dollars are gone, the dogs are gone. So, but one of them had to slink over to my left because Matt broke through on my left deep objective, and for one turn had to contest while his buddy fought True Seeker, and he was going to die.
Yeah.
The guy was dead. And then, in any given set of circumstances in Free Blades, anybody can kill anybody. So, it's true that if a Levy Spearman fights a True Seeker, 99 times out of 100, the Levy Spearman's going to die. But that one time, that wasn't his day. He was going to die. And when he died, the other Levy Spearman was going to have to survive a morale test to be able to contest.
Yep.
And I didn't want to break my leader out of that combat to get him back.
Right.
And the terrain wasn't helping me be within 6, so I'm just gonna suck it up. 25% chance passing morale test, which I did.
Boom.
Yeah.
And
that kept me from losing those sweeper 2 points.
Pulled it through when
Yeah.
you needed to.
So, but the story of the other side of the battlefield is the Jackal Priest use of Death Shaper. Which reminds me, why the hell did I take the death tokens? I don't even know why I'm doing that. I classically switched to the alternate faction theme rule.
Yeah.
And this is probably gonna fan more flames of the faction theme rule discussion that's going on in Discord. We're gonna do something very different and better with them going forward in 2.0. And 2, we're going to be talking about it more Change Seeker Council, my designer's blog, because there is disagreement about their status and their importance and their value. And we've got to, whether we're going to be believed or not, I can't say, but we at least got to get our reasons why they look the way they do and why we've done what we've done up to the players. Now, no matter what we say, there's going to be a group of players. That's not true. I've played 5 games. I know how these work. So we'll have some honest disagreement there.
Sure.
But we want to make sure everybody at least knows where our basis philosophy is. But I typically switch it up. Forgot. It's employed death tokens because they're in my Kendor case.
And they're pretty.
They're cool. Yeah, they're I have 6 death tokens that are the guy from the Boneswell host that's in the ground.
Yeah, it's coming up out of the ground.
Coming up out of the ground.
So, perfect.
Because this little guys come up out of the ground all over mats. But when I play the Jackal Priest, 90% of the spell points I'm going to spend are going to be on Death Shape.
I don't even remember you
I tried to summon both rolls.
You did. You
Failed.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, I can roll badly.
You've never failed on the death shape.
No, that was dirty. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, there were so many wounds negated, pulled right off of there.
Yeah.
From that death chamber.
Yeah. So Matt was wailing on you, an awakened or a crack shaper, both
Both. Yeah.
at different times, and I was maybe 6 inches back. Duel, and that's kind of the whole point of that, right?
Right.
That he was on an objective, the Jackal Priest, on my back right, and in a position to death shape on models to the center and deep right. So that those guys would stay in the fight while I won it somewhere else, maybe.
Right. And I may or may not have a Varkrawlin Stalker now because of that fight.
To shoot my Jackal Priest.
Oh yeah.
You know what that means? Different faction next time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
It was a great game.
It was great.
The breakdown, Matt had a state archer guarding his back right, my deep left. And eventually, because I kept shooting it with a levy spearman, how many turns did it take to get to the center of a state archer? 3?
Yeah, it was 3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it finally dropped.
I put him down, stepped forward, touched it, and there wasn't anybody back there. Yeah, that was going to be the difference. And the levy spearman who passed the morale test gave me the time to have that be, to get that done, a bigger gap. Yep. So great game. Fun as hell.
It was a great game.
A normal 275 non-play test, those are gold to me.
Just a fun game.
Just a game of free blades. I so envy other people just playing the game. Because I'm designing something new or remembering an old rule wrong, or we're two stat line sets ahead. One's in the playtest, cycle, and one's being designed for November.
Right.
We're finishing up the playtest in the guys for August.
Yeah.
And we're getting November out there, so that's what's in my head. So I can just take a day off and play Candor. Yeah. Remember the cards we were sweet, man. Okay, what are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today?
Pass.
I don't know. We're going to talk about the paths of Faelon today. This is going to sound weird. I was rummaging around the original rule book, the soft cover original rule book.
Printed rule book.
Yes, the printed.
Making the Warfire guys jealous. We're gonna get to you guys. We're gonna plan to help.
We're talking about this. Yeah,
Jordan's got to me with his desires. We're gonna make that.
I was rummaging around it, and I was pulling some stuff out from the jar Sid for something completely different.
Yeah,
that we're just gonna tease there.
So you have that story, right?
Yeah. So I was pulling quotes out of there for that proposal.
Right.
And I saw the page that was just the paths of Faelon, and it described all of them really, really well. And I thought, you know what? We haven't talked about that with any depth, and maybe we should talk about that because that kind of undergirds, from a cosmological point of view, most of Faelon.
Right.
And I thought, man, that would be really cool. And I've already designed a great flyer visual asset to go with it when we release this, so they'll have something
to talk about the past.
About the past.
This will have all night.
It does.
The time has come. We get started doing secrets.
The time has come, and I was really hoping. I was talking to Jon about this, and I was like, "Man, we've got 6. Can we reveal the other 3?" And it's like we can't. So we're going to be big spoilers today. Revealing
more spoilers.
Yes. Yeah. Revealing
for a stat line spoiler, you gotta wait till next time.
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah.
But we get 3 new paths today, which I think is really exciting. But let's.
Are they new though?
They're not.
They're new to the player.
They're new to the players. It's something that's been rolling around on our tongues for a while. But let's rewind it. Get our excitement reeled back in.
Okay.
And let's start from the beginning. What is a path in the world of Faelon?
So before I answer, am I answering this first from this perspective of mechanics or from lore? Lore. Okay.
Let's undergird it.
Yeah. So, because that's not how it started.
Right.
Right. But so because we had this discussion on Discord that for me as a designer, mechanics first,
Right.
more to follow
Right.
it. But so the idea being that uh, all tied to the cosmology of Faelon, people fall into a set of nine, nine,
Nice.
six, nine, nine tendencies, right?
Yeah.
Not, it's not lockstep. You don't break away from it, with some kind of, you know, anxiety or trauma. But just sort of because this, and then things are, when you write them, things are from the familiar.
Right.
And I had this same struggle myself. I was fighting my path as a
Mhm.
younger person, and I had a mentor set me straight, you know. And so that influenced me. That
Sure.
I had a mechanic problem to solve,
Mhm.
but I wanted a good story, to go. And something that belonged to us, something that belonged to the world of Phelan. That wasn't something else's, someone else's. So um, there are these um, tendencies, these callings. I guess probably the best
Yeah.
way to
Like
look at
that.
it, 'cause that's where I was, my
Right.
own personal experience. That you can resist or deviate from to a small extent, but generally fighting the whole thing is not productive. So you sort of slide into your your path,
Your place.
your place in the way the world is built, and your role in it. What's your you know
What's your place in the
contribution going to
universe?
be to moving your society forward? It's
Yeah.
going to be in this area. And so um, and they line up like everything does on the golf,
Right.
right?
Right.
So when we as the people of Phelan tried to understand our creator and failed, the creator divided itself into nine aspects to make it more understandable. Those aspects became um, what became the paths.
Right. Right.
So, and they are
Oh, here we go.
right,
Here we go.
Blade, okay, warriors.
Yep.
One interesting thing is people, typically think of their archers as horns,
Right.
right? Horns are hunters, providers, scouts,
Right.
right? Uh, but you could be a military archer, and that shows up in the paths when you make a character in Bright Sword or the advancement tables in Free Blaze, that there are military archer skills and talents, in the blade path, but there are, hunting and, you know, uh, picking something out of concealment is different than picking something out of an engagement.
Right.
The
Right.
warrior archer wants to be able to pick something out of engagement.
Right.
The hunter wants to pick something out of concealment.
Right. The horn's more tied to the land.
Yes. Okay. So blade, horn,
Mhm.
hunters and scouts. Blade's a warrior. Mask. Okay. And the mask is the mask of, theater, drama,
Right.
right? You have that picture of the masquerade,
Yeah.
the mask you're holding up in front of your face, the change in identity, the mystery, right? They're performers, assassins, thieves, something that has to do with, um,
Subtlety.
change, subtlety, change in perspective,
Hmm.
changing your reality or perceived reality. So blade, horn, mask, wheel,
Real.
which are, travelers, explorers,
Right.
right? The conquistador is the classic wheel.
Yeah.
Right? Um, coins,
Right.
which are not just merchants, they're producers.
Right.
So
Right.
they're working
Craft.
with some kind of provider of
Hmm.
goods,
Yeah.
seller of goods, so the crafters are also in the coin path, not just the merchants. All ends of the business,
Right.
right?
Right.
Vertical and horizontal integration. So blade, horn, mask, scroll. Okay, so scrolls are your sages, your casters, your wizards, um, and so students, think people
Right.
that are scholars,
Right.
people that are looking into gathering more knowledge and understanding their environment, their world, and doing something with that knowledge.
Right.
So those are the six. that have been generally known in the game system since time immemorial.
Right.
But there's 9 gone,
There is.
right? So what's going on there? So some societies try to downplay or mask or hide or alter the roles of the other 3.
Right.
And some societies say it's a, you know, we're not complete without all of our aspects, good and bad.
Right.
Whether or we don't ascribe good and bad; they just are.
They just are.
You know, you have to do whatever you're doing, and those, those attached to the Gehenna,
Yes.
the 3 rebel belt. Okay, so the blade is the lamp,
Mhm.
right? The horn is the hearth. The mask is the portal, right? The wheel is the ship. Um, scroll's the eyes.
It is.
Okay, am I missing something? Okay,
Coin.
coin is the hammer.
Yes.
Okay, so we also have the hood,
Yes.
which is the shroud,
Yes.
right? Um, the chain, which is the cage, and the scepter, which is the monolith.
Right.
And one of the things we do as Bright Sword game masters, one of the depths that we have, because right now, currently you can't make a character of those patterns.
Right.
That demand will rise until we can't handle it anymore. We're going to provide to
You're gonna have to do it. Yeah.
those are the villains typically,
Right.
you know, the source of your villains. And the source of some of our story making
Absolutely.
is a monarch, you know, blade, scepter,
Right.
right? You know, it's the monolith and its, aspect of dominion and rule, you know, bad for its own right? Or is that, that's something that we should have as society?
A natural
That's
balance.
that's the debate. That
Yeah.
is the central debate between the cultures of Faelon
Yeah.
is what is the role of these things?
Right.
Okay. But there are obviously people who, fall onto these paths, have these callings that are tied to the rebel. What are rebel called to some, and some are like, these are the best 3. What are you talking about? So the depth story is going to play out more and more. We're going to, we're going to wind up the Bright Sword War here pretty soon. Talk through, work through that whole narrative and all of our campaigns and other work, and then we're going to have this story play out.
Yeah.
As to the role of the, what the status of the canon now, and what are they up to, and what's their future hold, and how does that play out in Phelan? That's coming down the road.
Yeah.
So there'll be a rise in, as the real Bright Sword rule book gets completed, and that becomes more of a branch of what we're doing, the role playing branch. Um, that will become more and more of a thing, and more and more. Um, uh, more and more available in Free Blades games as well, in terms of things that you can do and characters that you play.
Right. Right.
But I think you heard it here first, generally. I mean, I think we've had this conversation with some of our creatives because that's our part of the narrative. I don't think we've talked about that publicly until.
I don't think so.
Right.
No, I don't think so.
So
That's gonna be a very exciting time. Because we've been living, you obviously longer than me, but with the reality of the Bright Sword War about to break for a while, and that is going to be amazing.
right,
What we have planned for that is going to be fantastic. It's going to be a very good time to be a Free Blades player,
oh yeah,
or Bright Sword player.
yeah,
Um, but I'm also very much looking forward to an advancing of the timeline where that is in the
past,
rear view,
yeah,
right? And we have this fresh story to build into and tell. Um, so
yeah.
very
And
excited.
this is a joke that we have, but I've considered discussing the idea of this. The Bright Sword War winds back down the other end, turning that narrative over to one of their team members, and going back and doing the CryGen type thing.
I
Like,
would
Wars Heresy.
I would just
I know.
I'm ruling now.
And you know what's
I
causing
just
me
keep my
to think that more and more? Hey, what's making me think that more and more is seeing the art from Neo, from the Apollo
like,
Orca cards,
yes,
where the card shows a scene from the CryGen part of our
yes,
history.
yes,
Oh, he's just killed it.
right.
Those uniforms and the armors and shields and,
And I I mean,
settings.
I think that as those come out, and this is just an aside from what we've been talking about, but as we see all those cards at Gen Con, and people start to get a look at those, I think there's going to be a
I
big
am
for that.
leaving. The last card is done. I'm leaving here to go create the prototypes. So we have prototypes that jump. That is now a thing we will have. We've talked about it. We're gonna miss the mark a little bit on delivery.
We are. We are.
But we have a plan to, we're already giving free shipping. We have a plan to reward our
And it's
Kickstarter
cool.
backers. It's cool.
It's a
It's cool.
plan.
Right. I made Jeff happy. It's gonna be cool. Um, we have a Kickstarter exclusive that we are going to give to the for the patients and the people living with it for a couple
We do.
months when we get past the tariff business. But the card art on the Oracle isn't just for your use as a divinatory deck,
Right.
or for your use as a role-playing prop.
Right.
But people are going to look at this art and go, "Give me this part of Faelon.
Right. Give me that.
I
Yes.
want that."
Like, oh, me too.
You know,
Me
right?
too. Every time a new card comes out, I'm like, oh,
We're crazy again.
more story.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful.
My Brightsword group has sailed past the Gleamspire.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Nice.
I'm going to tell you about that conversation.
We-
Anyway, we were talking about past. What's next?
So, so we kind of got the setup. How do the ideas of paths interact in the game? How do they,
Okay,
how do
so
they come into play?
they, I when I made them originally, we had a couple problems to solve. Have the world be unique,
Right.
right? But there's also a mechanical problem of character creation.
Yes.
Okay. And, and we've talked about it before in the podcast. When I was doing this, I was an original white box D&D player when it first came out. Um, I, I was not happy, still not happy with the mixing of armor and dexterity as a way to defend yourself. I was a fan of Rollmaster because they divided that out. But I had so many adjustments to the games. Somebody said, "Why don't you just write your own?" So when you're going to make a character, if you have a template like you do in D&D, I'm going to be a fighter,
Right.
okay? And I've got a table, and I'll get so many XP, and I go up a level, and that gives me another set of stuff, okay? Wasn't open-ended enough for me, right? So I want to make it open-ended where there's generally a guideline on what you are going to, because I have my list of my fighter feats and my fighter abilities and my
Yeah.
fight whatever, skill ups, whatever it is in whatever game. So you have a blade, but if you wanted to, pay a little extra from a mechanical standpoint, you could go out into the mask realm and kind of customize your person, because no calling is 100% one way,
Right.
right?
Right.
So there's different versions of those folks, and it's the trouble is you run into, and it's just me. This is just one person. I'm philosophically opposed to power gaming or role playing.
Yeah.
I have power gamed some games in my time.
No.
Oh yeah, right. I'm a competitive player. It's true, but all Harlequin jet bike force from the second edition. Looking, but in a role playing game, it's the interaction. So when somebody says, "Well, I've got my blade," and and we're talking about making bright sword characters. Hang with us for a moment. I'm going to wrap it back into free blades in just a second. But I have my blade character I'm making in the role playing game, and I'd like to have dodge to the mask talent. I'm going to pay an extra, veg point to go get that talent. And the min maxer, the power gamer looks at that and goes, "I'm not. This is no fun.
Right.
I should be able to have, completely free to do whatever I want." And there's no story to that.
There isn't.
There's
And in Bright Sword, I think especially, it's about the narrative.
yeah. So from a balance standpoint, the game is designed so that it's expected that a character will take a handful of AP and spend it out of path.
Right.
It's built that way.
Right.
You're not like, "Oh, I'm killing myself because I don't have," Bob spent all 20 of his AP on his blade character, but I spent a couple extra getting this mass talent. He's all 20. I'm only really worth 18 of stuff. It sounds mean. If you're a person who's into that, I'm going to sound mean to you, but it's a philosophical difference.
Right.
Okay. I'm in between the complete narrative role playing game. I've seen them. I've been a part of them. I think they're cool. Not my personal favorite. Right. And the entirely character sheet driven.
Right.
role playing. I'm in the middle.
Right.
You know, and the game I designed was in the middle.
Yeah.
You know, because originally it was for me. It was for my friends. And we did it because I had a role playing group that wanted that.
Right.
Right. And I gave it to them. You know, that's why you know, Bright Sword looked like it did. It looks like it did. Is because that original crew of characters, that's what they wanted. We talked about it.
Yeah.
How do you want this to go? I want to be able to make some choices. I want to go out and spend a couple extra points to grab some other stuff. Like multi-classing.
Yeah.
You know, you had to give up certain, you're not perfectly efficient when you multi-class, but you get some bennies that you don't normally get.
Right.
That's how it is.
You have some freedom.
Yeah. So that's where the paths were mechanically, right? Now, how's that relevant for free blades? They're made the same way.
That's right.
If you are a 30 gold hero in free blades, you are functionally the equivalent of a 30 AP character in Brightsword. Now, here's the trick, Bob, right? Your free blades characters spend X gold on your sword.
Right.
You spend more gold on a D10 greatsword than you do on a D4 dagger. It's more of your value. But if you're a brightsword character, you bought that with your allowance.
Right.
You found it in a treasure hoard, whatever, took it off your enemies like you're supposed to. It wasn't, you didn't spend we call it AP, adventure points, XP, same thing. You didn't spend AP on it, you went up and got it.
Right.
Okay. But you have about the same number of AP invested in secondary skills that don't show up in.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So you still are about a 30-point character, right? You got your greatsword for free AP wise because you spent coins on it in the role playing game. But your character also includes AP spent on skills that aren't showing up over here in persuade and
Right.
navigate and these kinds of things, you know, craft, you know, whatever it is. So it comes out to the same. That converter is out there being play tested right now, where you can, you know, go move characters back and forth between the two games. So that when Brightsword goes full real, we make a hard, you know, a physical rule book,
right,
that you'll be able to body your characters out into free blades, play a big fight, a big combat session, and then come back in, convert back in.
Right.
So, and the paths are part of that mechanically.
Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah.
So the question is, though, what are the talents and skills on the scepter path, on
That was going to be
the chain path?
my last question.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's in the vault, sir.
yeah. Oh, I know it's a
Yeah.
floor, and look
And right now, only one person's got the combo. Everyone shared with Faelon and Jeff. They're championing the bit to throw into that, but I've distracted them both with, OSS and things like that.
but here's the shiny.
That's right. This
Don't look over here.
That's right. Look at this. Hey, OSS is a great shiny.
It is a shiny.
Tales of the Shadow Gyre. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that's some great stuff coming up.
It is.
And Jeff's working on the first expansion of the board game.
Lots of stuff coming down.
Killer stuff going on. Yeah. So yeah, paths. Faelon. currently 6 available to you. The press will about it. We'll give you the.
We'll give you the give you the full line.
You can go be a villain,
but they exist.
And also, I will say, at some point, I think every role player wants to spend a campaign being the villain.
Absolutely.
Right. I once was part of a group that raided the Moot in the old Warhammer Fantasy world.
Right.
Punting hobbits. Awesome. Lighting their babies on fire. Awesome. Just saying. You got to do it once in your life. But better than that, crazily better than that, because that sounds pretty good, right? I've had enough of your pies, you little bastard. Because Phil,
Sure.
played the hobbits that we interacted with, the halfling. Yeah. See the halflings in the Warhammer Fantasy roleplay. They were everyone in an Irish accent. They were the most hateable characters imaginable. So, raising their mood to the, hay double and salt or ground. But we were in an old Shadow World campaign, the old Iron Crown rules. We played an entirely lizard man pirate crew.
Oh, nice.
Oh my goodness. And it got monotonous. How much story can you tell that over and over? We're going to another town.
Right.
We're a bunch of lizard pirates. They're scared of us. We don't look like them. We can't infiltrate.
Right.
Right. And so that became, but for, 10 sessions of that,
Yeah.
everybody's gonna do it once they're role playing. Beat a villain, so we're gonna let you be a separate hood and chain. So
Awesome.
sure.
All right. So job board. We kind of forgot to talk about this.
Oh, we didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So normally at this juncture of the podcast, we talk about
Yeah. Did you have one you had?
no,
I do.
because I'm a total loser and completely forgot about the job board. But I'm so glad that you are on.
I'm always tuned into Discord. So there's always something going on. Let me take this moment because the job board part of the podcast is when we take a question somebody's given us on the Sleeping Rush podcast, but channel. We don't really have one of those from this week, but what we do have is a set of discussions. Players are coming to us with the challenges they have getting into the game or a rule they bumped into.
Right.
And we say things like, we put it on our dashboard. We are not making that up.
No.
Okay.
We have a dashboard.
We have a dashboard. We take your issues, we put them on there.
Yes.
What I don't want is for people to think that we are, because you can't judge tone of voice or attitude from the text words,
You can't.
of a channel on social media. Because some things would probably sound snarky and they're not meant to. Okay. Now, I'll give you an example. If you say, I'm having trouble with rule X or game effect X, I can't seem to break it. It's providing a negative play experience.
Right.
Right. We are going to explore whether that is because there's a real problem that the rules need to change, or is it you? And I don't mean you like you're dumb. I don't mean that at all.
Right.
I mean, like, for example, we uncovered, you know, I'm having trouble with X. Why don't you do this? Because that's the way you typically handle it. You can do that. Okay, it's in the rules now,
Right.
and we have a big rule book, and people haven't read it all the way through or
Sure.
whatever they've done. And it's cool to point it out. And it might sound like we're being kind of dickish about it. Well, you could have done the thing that's on page 24. We actually mean that
Right.
because we're not going to go change it if it's working, but you haven't discovered the counterplay to it.
Right.
We're going to help you find the counterplay.
Yes.
Okay.
We have to make sure that you know everything that's going on before we address an actual issue.
Right.
But we are looking for actual issues.
Yes. And they go on there
Particularly-
regardless.
Yes.
They go on and they stay there until we make a determination. Well, they stay there forever.
Right.
They get, tabled when we decide that we've got it under control. We're going to help the person, and sometimes it is, but it's a change. We go and make a change in the rules.
Yeah.
But if we have a game effect, it's been in the game for 10 years and it's never been really complained about any big way. It pops up in tournaments and one-offs and encounters games, and people deal with it. And a group or a person runs into having a hard time with it, it's probably not broken.
Right.
If it was broken, it wouldn't have survived playtest. Some stuff gets past you. It probably wouldn't have survived the consumer saying, you should have playtested this.
Right.
Okay, so why is it sitting out there working? Somebody's missed a word, and this is what the case was this week. There was a word in the rules that was, kind of, oh, I thought it meant this. No, we're going to help with that.
Right.
We're not going to go change the effect.
Right.
Okay, the effect's working fine. Right. What we're going to do is we're going to help. Now with the tournament pack, the tournament pack's in playtest.
Sure.
And one of the two tournaments we had this last couple of weeks, there was some feedback on it, and we're going to change.
Yeah.
The boys are currently reviewing the, draft right now.
Yeah.
Based on things that we got from Jordan's tournament, the Warp Fire tournament, and the one at Game Preserve.
Right.
So we're going to, make those changes based on their experiences. In some cases, we're making the changes. In some cases, we're not making that change because it's working, but either we need to help you find it, we need to explain it better. We're going to refine that into, whatever the answer is. Right. The most important thing about that is we are absolutely not blowing you off.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And now, if you go, I think you should change this, and we don't, and you feel blown off.
Right.
Yeah.
If you, one of the things that I don't, obviously, I'm not saying that we should let people into the internal conversations, but if you all saw the internal conversations about how
you'd run to the hills.
and in the respect that, yes, you would, but
Right.
in the respect that, like, when one of these issues comes across, the chatter internally is almost immediate.
Amongst us.
Yes,
Yeah.
amongst us.
Yeah.
It is seen, it is inquired, we ask ourselves, are we seeing this across to any other players or playerships?
Right.
Um, have we run into this problem before? Right. And so we go through all of these different steps where we're
Yep.
looking at it and then an answer is given. Or maybe it's very apparent what the answer is and the answer goes back out. Or it's one of these that you were just talking about, John. We're going to put that on the table and we're going to take a look at it internally and we're going to play test through some things and we're going to mess with it and see what's going on here.
You know what just made me think of? We need to let's take a note for one of the change seeker councils. One of the things we keep running into is you have a tactic in the game, okay? A thing you can do.
Right.
Tactics aren't rules,
Right.
right? Okay.
Right.
So you have a game effect. It's hard to overcome. It's difficult to, you know, it's challenging, right? There's tactics to deal with it, okay? Um, and I'm from a generation or a group or whatever, a background where I want to discover those methods.
Yeah.
And we're finding more and more, I don't understand how it is I'm supposed to deal with X. Please teach me.
You know,
Right.
it's funny you say this.
And I'm curious what the change seekers would say.
Yeah,
Right.
it's funny you say this because I took a note on this last night between our internal conversations yesterday and our meeting.
Right.
Um, I took a note on that I wanted to discuss with you after we were done here. So
Okay.
that's great.
More to follow, dear listener.
More to
Well, and you know what? On that point, are you use the Sleep and Grush podcast text channel? Are you the kind of person that wants to discover how it is you deal with game effect Z,
Yeah.
whatever it is, um, or a combination of things like somebody using this was one of the discussions, a model with a disguise talent to lock down an objective,
Right.
because they're treated like they're part. You can't attack them.
Yeah.
Right. That is breakable. Right. It's about for the person who's using it. It's about how can I use the time I'm given, that one little, moment of they've got to work a little harder to break it before I'm discovered, and then of course I'm squishy, so I die.
Right.
If I'm not careful. Do I want to discover that? Because it's not going to be in the rule book.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's either it's going to be told to you, or you're going to find it out on your own, right? You're going to work with your fellow gamers in that. So we're looking for what you think about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because um, I pour through rule books and play games to solve those puzzles.
Right.
But I'm not making this rule book for us. We're
Right.
going to find out what your thoughts are.
John's looking at the Matrix.
That's it, right. I'm not seeing ones and zeros, just zeros.
All right, folks. Before we sign off, we'd like to thank Paul Trubia, a World of Faelon Patreon subscriber that supports DGS games and its community at the world builder level. Thank you very much for your contributions, Paul, and for the work you do for the community. For more information on the World of Faelon Patreon, please visit www.patreon.com/DGS games. Folks, that's all we have for you today. Thank you very much for listening, for being here with us, for contributing, for interacting with us on Discord.
And being patient.
Always patience.
Well, that's knuckleheads.
There has to be a level of that. So, folks, until next time, we'll see you around the table.
Sil Sakaba.